Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report here from World Dairy Expo. Dan, let's get into grain and feed prices a little bit. No government shutdown. That means we will have the October 12th report. We did see USDA adjust yields in this last in the September report. Do you think that trend continues? And kind of what is your forecast for grain prices right now?
So we believe in the upcoming report next Friday. They'll cut another bushel or two from the corn yield, maybe a bushel from soybean yield. We're thinking about a 171, 172 U.S. corn yield, a 49 bean yield. The Group 3 beans are really getting hit because of the dryness in September. Those are the beans that mature later. So, I think that the corn and bean markets are getting close to some seasonal lows. They normally happen around Columbus Day. And then as we start to think about the market longer term, we pivot our attention to South American weather, which is abnormal, at least today. Argentina is going through a third year of drought. Australia's got problems, too much rain in southern Brazil. My Brazilian office is already hearing farm complaints about what's occurring, at least with the early seeding. So we're worried about South America. That may give the market a bump. And for farmers, that would be good because revenue insurance is all dictated by the month of October. If prices stay low for another few weeks, we get bigger checks as farmers and then start to rally the market maybe in early November.
Another thing we're watching is this U.S. dollar and the strength in the U.S. dollar. And Ben, why are we seeing so much strength right now? And are we seeing that impact our U.S. agricultural exports?
We are on the dairy side. That's been a big impact. As the stronger dollar does make it more expensive to buy U.S. dairy products and other dairy products really that are priced in the U.S. dollar. But it does start to slow that down, and we've seen exports have become increasingly important. And in a year like 2022, we have a lot to thank for the exports that helped drive those prices so high. So in years where we don't see as much competitiveness in terms of global prices and we have a strong dollar that's a little bit of an additional headwind, years like this, we're starting to see the downside. Now, I think that long term, there's still a positive story in global demand and our ability to serve that. But in the meantime, things like currency fluctuations and prices around the world do tend to put us in and out of those markets and add to some volatility that I think is just going to be a fact of life as we become a bigger player in the export markets.
Katie, you mentioned that there may be some positives moving forward when it comes to exports in these export markets. Well, what are some of those potentially?
Yes, I think the future for the U.S. dairy industry is very bright. And the reason for that is when we look at the other main dairy suppliers around the world, that being Europe and New Zealand, in those countries, they're facing environmental restrictions. And so it does not seem like they are going to be able to grow their dairy industries in any big extent. But in the long run, we do still expect demand for dairy products to grow. So I think the U.S. is going to be best positioned to serve those markets. But as Ben was talking about, there are going to be some ups and downs along the way. So even though this year exports have been choppy, in the long run, I think there's a lot of opportunity there for the U.S. market.
Yeah, I've mentioned the volatility. Something else we've been talking about on the show and something that economists had mentioned is possibly us seeing a deglobalization when it comes around the world. Are we starting to see that, and what protein or what sector do you think that could hit the most, Dan?
So deglobalization means that we're regionalizing trade, I guess is the way we're talking about it, or production. And I think if you look at the BRIC countries and some of the other formations that have been happening recently, that has been occurring. We'd like to see whey demand kicking up, our primary problem being China. So I need the Chinese to buy less of Brazilian or South American product, or maybe down in New Zealand or our friends down in Australia. I need them to come back here. Hopefully the U.S. can politically make some progress, but I am worried about what you talked about, which is regional hubs forming and the U.S. dominance in terms of global ag trade being diminished.
Well, let's end on a positive note, so I'm going to ask each of you, okay? What is one positive thing you want to leave us with, Ben?
I'm still optimistic that we've got pretty good milk prices into next year, and there's going to be some relief on the feed side. There's going to still be some costs that are sticky, but I think the cost side of the margin is going to improve this next year.
Katie?
I echo that. I am continually impressed as I talk to producers around the show about the innovative things they're doing on the dairy to help manage the volatility. And so because of that, I think it's just a really strong outlook, and dairy farmers can persevere through these tough times, and I'm sure there'll be better times ahead.
Dan?
I think our government is such a mess that it's going to cause a weakness in the dollar as we lose confidence. And so with that in mind, and $33 trillion of debt in this country by the first quarter of next year, I do believe that weakening dollar brings back export trade to the United States. I'm optimistic beyond November on U.S. demand, as it starts to come back from Latin America and other places.
When you started that with our government as a mess, I wasn't sure you could turn that positive, but you did. So kudos to you, Dan.
Hey, if you're a Brazilian farmer, you always want government to be a mess because it helps keep your currency down. Anyway, I'm there back to
Very true. Well, thank you all for joining us from World Dairy Expo. We appreciate it. Stay with us. We have much more from U.S. Farm Report when we come back.